There are so many great trumpet solos out there that are satisfying to learn, and they can help you develop musicality and confidence as a performer. Even though there's no shortage of repertoire available to learn, if you're unsure of what to do in the practice room and how to get the most out of your time, it often leads players feeling frustrated or even defeated at their lack of ability to get better. In this video, we're gonna go over 8 tips that I have for getting more out of your time in the practice room. My hope is that one or more of these tips is helpful to you to gain more confidence in your practicing and in performing. The first tip I have for you is to listen to more than one recording. You're probably already aware that listening to a recording is a very important part of the process of learning music. If you don't really have an idea of what it's supposed to sound like, your practicing often becomes aimless, or you're wandering a little bit, wondering, is what I'm doing right? The reason it's a good idea to listen to more than one recording is because not only do you get even more context for the piece itself, but you also get the opportunity to listen to the different recordings and hear what is stylistically similar. Maybe things like intonation and articulation or rhythm, and which things are different from recording to recording. Maybe things like tempo, rubato, vibrato, or dynamic extremes. If you're currently only listening to one recording when preparing a piece of music, consider listening to more than one to deepen your knowledge of the piece of music that you're currently trying to learn. Practicing without a plan is improvisatory at best and wandering at worst. Having a great plan will allow you to do quality work on one day that will lead to quality work on the next day, and you can really almost think of it like building a house. You're setting one brick on top of each other so that when it's over with, you have a structure that will last. So what does it mean to have a good plan? Well, I think that a good plan is developed by asking questions like these. What musical sections will I practice each day? How fast or slow should I practice each section? How much time or how many repetitions will I devote to each musical section? What am I trying to improve in each section? How long will I practice before I take a break? How will I ensure I remain focused during my practice session? If you can answer questions like that, a program or a practice plan will emerge from those answers, and it's going to be one that's specific to you, your goals, and your learning style. That list of questions that I shared earlier is by no means exhaustive, and actually I'm kind of curious to hear from you. What questions do you think are good to ask when developing a good practice plan? I'd love to hear in the comments down below. Continuing on from the previous point, my recommendation is to leave a good amount of time to learn the thing you're trying to learn and to practice the hard things first. What I mean by this is you're going to identify which sections of the music you're learning are the most challenging. Maybe it's the craziest technique, or maybe it's got some range you would struggle with, and you want to isolate those things, take them out of context, and you want to work on those sections for a couple of weeks before you start diving into the entire piece. This is going to make the entire process of learning easier, because it's very frustrating to work on a piece of music and have some sections be no problem at all, and other sections are so frustrating that you just don't know what to do with them. And isolating these tough sections means you can give the emphasis and the attention you need to those sections, and you're almost like raising the floor. So you're taking these difficult things, you're making them better, and then when you start working on everything's at a little bit more even or consistent level, and then you can just dive into everything and refine it all together. A general recommendation I have for technical sections specifically is to start them at half tempo, and then I like to add 4% to each repetition I do. So if you start at 50 beats per minute, you're gonna take it times 4%, which is 2, and so your next repetition will be at 52, and so on. Before we move on, if you're getting value from this video, I would really appreciate it if you would like this video. It does help the YouTube algorithm figure out who else to send this video to. If you want to stay updated on videos that I produce in the future, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate all of your support. When you're practicing music, it can be really easy to just go through the motions. to just take a breath and start playing without thinking too deeply about what's going on and just being satisfied with whatever comes out of the trumpet. But I would encourage you to be more intentional about your music making and to make specific musical decisions about the music you are learning. Don't settle for going halfway on this. Really dig into the music and make some decisions that you think will make the most musically compelling product. Let's take a look at an example. We're gonna take a look at Andante and Allegro by Roparts. It's a very common piece to play, and many players would look at the music and they would listen to a recording, and putting those two things together, they would hear that it's soft and lyrical. So the goal would just be to pick up the trumpet and play soft and lyrically. But there are so many more questions we can ask to get so much more out of our music making. Some examples of questions I would ask about this music specifically is, exactly what tempo do I want to start the piece at? How soft do I want to play the piano dynamic in the beginning? How much do I want to crescendo and decrescendo in the third bar? Should I try to connect the notes as much as possible, or should there be some separation between these notes? How does the music change where it says dolce? How should I treat the two staccatos that are underneath the slur? Where is the climax of each phrase? Where is the climax of the whole section? How should I differentiate the opening phrase, but when it comes back at mezzo piano? If we look at the following Allegro sections, you could ask questions like, how loud does the forte dynamic need to be? How much articulation do I need to be stylistically appropriate? When should I play separated and when should it be more connected? And what tempo should I plan to play to make the triplets at the leggero section sound light? If you can answer questions like these, your music making will instantaneously become more intentional. If you struggle to answer questions like these, go listen to the recordings that you've found, but listen way more carefully for answers to those questions. Or you can do what I'm going to suggest in the very next tip. Much of your life as a musician is going to be spent sitting in a practice room working on music alone. If you're unable to handle that, being a working musician might be tough to accomplish. But one of the joys of being in music is collaboration and those times that we get to play with others. When you're learning music, it's always a good idea to seek out feedback from somebody that you trust. You're going to use this person to not only be a sounding board about things you are interested in them trying to give you feedback on, but also maybe them opening you up to new ideas of ways to do it that you hadn't previously thought of. Generally, this is going to be done by a music teacher, although it could be done by peers, and maybe you're somebody who is in music school right now at a college or university, so you have this covered. But if you're in high school, or you're like me and you've graduated and you're in a professional environment where you're not in a space where you're taking lessons regularly, you might need to go seek out people to help you do this so that you can continue to improve. Recording yourself is also a great source of feedback, and you should definitely consider incorporating recording into your practice sessions if you don't do it regularly. Each and every one of us who plays an instrument likely picked up the instrument because we wanted to perform music, or we enjoyed making sounds on it and it was fun. But that's only half of the equation for success as an instrumentalist. The other half is much less sexy, it's very overlooked, and it's often skipped by people who just don't want to do the work, and that is practicing your fundamentals. Without practicing your fundamentals, you are robbing yourself the opportunity to make music easier to learn and being able to access more challenging music over time. Think about it this way. A piece of music is going to have lots of different musical skills layered on top of each other. If you look at the example that we had from before, the Andante and Allegro, we have skills like dynamic contrast, articulation, slurring, range, lyricism, and musical content all layered on top of each other. But what if you're someone who has consistent articulation, but you struggle with loud playing? Or maybe slurring is super easy for you, but adding the tongue presents its own challenges. This is where your fundamentals come in. It's far more efficient to design a routine with exercises that are going to specifically target the things you struggle with and allow you to explore and improve the specific skill you want to improve. Working on articulation in basic exercises from things like the Arbin book or the Goldman book is way better for you than trying to work on articulation in some solo where it's also attached with things like range and leaps and slurring and all that other kind of stuff. It's totally okay for you to learn a piece of music that's challenging for you, but you want to overcome those specific challenges in the context of a fundamental routine. If you're interested in building a fundamental routine, I will leave a link down below for the Gold Method app that I created. It just helps you put together a very logical structure for your fundamentals, and it's easy to follow, and I've had a lot of people tell me it's been very helpful for them, so if you're interested in that, go ahead and check it out. This next tip might seem like it's unrelated, but if you know anything about the brain, it makes a lot of sense. When you are practicing in a focused manner, and the key word is focused there, your brain releases neurochemicals that turn it on and make it ready for work and to change and things like that. And it also kind of turns on a spotlight to highlight neural connections and pathways that are being lit up while you are practicing during that focused state. It can be tempting to think that while you are practicing, you are rewiring your brain at that exact moment, but that's not actually the case. Instead, the brain takes all of that information and all of the fibers that it found when shining a spotlight, and the next time that you sleep or you're in some sort of deep rest, your brain begins to strengthen those neural connections, and it begins to weaken or remove other connections that aren't being used. Having a proper understanding of what we've been talking about in this tip means that you will focus when you practice, you will make sure that you get proper rest so that your brain can begin rewiring itself so that it can strengthen the connections that you want it to strengthen over time. And that part about it taking time is important because this kind of progress, like many things in nature, is not an overnight process. The reality that learning happens slowly over a long period of time can be frustrating in the time that we live. In the age of one-day shipping and instantaneously knowing anything you would ever want to know on Google, waiting for things to happen is not something we like to do. But we can't really force things to happen faster than they would because that's just not how it works. So what do? We trust the process and try to have a little fun. Try not to take the bad days so personally. Don't try to make decisions about what you think you're going to be capable of over the course of your entire career based on 1 or 2 practice sessions. If you can think of your practice sessions as less of an opportunity to prove something to yourself and more of an opportunity to find problems, explore solutions, and see if you can implement those solutions, practicing becomes this very engaging, almost fun activity that really challenges you as a person. My recommendation is to do the very best work you know how to do each and every day. Seek out people who will challenge you and help you improve, and trust that doing good work over a long time will lead to good things. I appreciate you watching this video and I hope it was helpful. If you have any questions or you have ideas for things that you want me to cover, leave it down below in the comments and I'd love to hear from you. These tips are really important to be able to practice and practice effectively. If you want to see how I apply these tips to my own practice, click the link on the screen. We'll see you in the next video.